Hello, students. What we have seen is that locals, the government, the industrialists, and the conservationists are stakeholders in the forest. But do all these stakeholders harm the forest? Do all these put forests and wildlife at risk? The answer is clearly no. The locals and the conservationists do not harm them. The use of the forest and their products is limited and sustainable. Let's look at it like this. Can people living in forests use up all their resources? Will they burn up their own homes completely? Or can their domesticated animals consume all the fodder? Sounds impossible, right? Well, that's true. This cannot be so. This is because they slowly consume the forest's produce and land so that plants and trees have enough time to regrow. They use the forest for their survival. They do not exploit them. Conservationists have the sole aim of sustainable management of these forests and wildlife. They have nothing to get benefited from. Now talking about the government. They come into picture partly to extract benefits and partly for its protection. They are no way dependent on them. So they are the only industrialists who exploit these forests for their profits rather than using them. And this greed makes them a threat to forest and wildlife. So locals have a need for small areas and limited products, while industrialists have a need for large areas and specific products, which creates a threat to these resources. If we go back in history, we find many instances where locals were involved in protecting and conserving forests and their resources. The Bishnoi community of Rajasthan is one such example. Amrita Devi Bishnoi is still remembered with reverence for the way she fought to protect the Khejri trees in Khejrali village. She, along with 363 other people, sacrificed their lives for the protection of Khejri trees in 1731. In her respect, the Government of India has recently instituted the Amrita Devi Bishnoi National Award for Wildlife Conservation. Another example is nomadic herders of Himalayas. Nomadic herders used to graze their animals near the Great Himalayan National Park. Every summer, they brought their herds down the valley so that their animals could get plenty of grass to eat. But when the national park was established in that area, the nomadic herders were stopped from grazing in that protected area. In the absence of grazing animals, the grass had begun to grow very tall in that region. The fall of these tall grasses prevented the growth of new fresh grasses, and thus creating a fall in biodiversity of this region. This shows that by excluding and alienating local people from the forests, proper conservation efforts cannot be carried out. Let's see another example, which is very famous, Chipko Andolan. It began in the early 1970s in a small village called Reni in Garhwal district in Himalayas. There was a dispute between local villagers of Reni and a logging contractor who had been allowed to cut trees in the forest. On a particular day, the contractor's workers appeared in the forest to cut trees, while the local males were absent. Not stopping this, the women of the village reached the forest quickly and hugged around the tree trunks to prevent the workers from cutting the trees, and ultimately forced him to withdraw. And thus this movement got its name, the Chipko Andolan. Chipko is the Hindi word which means to hug or to stick. The Arbari tribe is also one example of people's participation in forest conservation. In 1972, the Forest Department realized their mistake while they were reviving the degraded sal forests of the Arbari forest range in Midnapur district of West Bengal. The government realized that the earlier methods of policy making and surveillance were a total failure, as there were frequent clashes with local people. In fact, the forest and land related conflicts became a major factor and led to increased militant movements. Then came a forest officer named A.K. Banerjee who realized the problem and stated that without the experience and knowledge of locals, revival of this region is not possible. He therefore involved local people in revival of 1,272 hectares of forest land. He gave villagers employment through the practice of silviculture and also offered them 25% of harvest. Wait, did I just say silviculture? Yes, I did. So what does it mean? Silviculture is the practice of controlling the growth, composition, structure, and quality of forest to meet values and needs, specifically for timber production. Local people were also allowed to gather firewood and fodder for a nominal payment. There was active participation of the local community, and there was a remarkable revival of Arbari sal forest. The previously useless forest was now valued at 12 crore rupees. Isn't it amazing? Yes. So we can say that in any case, the damage caused to the forest cannot be attributed solely to the local people. In fact, they play a key role in protecting and conserving these forest resources due to their knowledge and expertise. Forest resources ought to be used in a manner that is both environmentally and developmentally sound. In other words, while the environment is preserved, the benefits of controlled exploitation should go to the people. This method of conserving forests is called sustainable management of forest resources. In our next video, we will learn about another resource, water resources.